Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, and let me know your opinion about the lighting of this live streaming. Usually, I used to use just one light from this direction, and now I added a second one from that direction. And my wife said that my live streamings look a little bit dark, and she also asked me to wear something lighter. So let me know your opinion. I think the light setting is good, and also wearing lighter also looks more peaceful than wearing darker. Since I moved to Berlin, I'm just wearing dark stuff. I think it's the environment, the weather, the people, the society is all like wearing dark, and we haven't seen sun for quite some time, so you become a little bit probably darker too. But let me know your opinion, guys. Lighting looks good. Great. One of you guys was mentioning Justin Trudeau. I wanted to show you today a video, a very short video of Justin Trudeau. I swear to God, every time I see a video of Justin Trudeau, when he speaks, I swear to God, I see like there is this small mustache here under his nose. Every time I see him speaking, I think he is a wannabe fascist leader, unfortunately. And there's so many of them in the what they call the civilized world, preaching tolerance, preaching multiculturalism, and preaching democracy, preaching freedoms, etc. But they are exactly the opposite. Today's live streaming is going to be very interesting. In the first part, we're going to discuss Navalny. Will Navalny be the messiah of New Russia? Many of his supporters believe that he will become the new messiah, and despite his death, he will be the figure that will trigger a revolution inside Russia and end the rule of Putin, and also bring democracy to Russia. Do Russians support him? And in comparison to Putin, how big of a support he enjoyed in Russia? Was he an MI6, a CIA asset, as some people claim online? We're going to also address that. And what does WikiLeaks say about him and about his movement in Russia? Was he funded from outside sources or not? And how the politicians, again, in the civilized world, capitalizing on his death in order to push for more war and sending more arms to Ukraine, using, of course, the Ukrainians as cannon fodder against the Russians. And how the German press, after this part, we're going to discuss a German journalist in a famous German newspaper attacked and smeared Assange, calling him an activist and he's a dangerous person. And we're going to discuss the allegations. And finally, the title of this video is about China's support for the Palestinians. And I think this was a bombshell statement from the Chinese legal expert at the fourth day of the hearings in the ICJ. I truly believe that this position is not only one step and not two steps, not three steps, probably 4 or 5 steps ahead of the Russian position on Palestine and the Palestinian cause. So we're going to discuss all these cases together, guys. I hope you are excited like me. At the beginning, I'm going to broadcast to you and screen to you the article published in Spiegel after Navalny's death. This is a translation from Google. The author says his name is Mikhail Tsigar. He is a Russian opponent. He's an opposition exiled to the United States, and I think currently he lives in Berlin, where I am right now. And he says Navalny will be the messiah of New Russia. And I wanted to summarize his ideas. Why does he believe that Navalny will be the messiah of Russia? He said, I never doubted that I would see him again. I was always sure that Navalny was a person with supernatural powers. So he believes Navalny was a person with supernatural powers, that he cannot die. Just as I was sure in 2020 that things would end well for him when Putin poisoned him with Novichok. I think many of us in the opposition thought Navalny was a magician. On the Russian internet, he was often compared to Harry Potter and Putin to Voldemort. You know, one of the problems with many of these opposition figures against the authoritarian regimes, for example, against Putin, against Assad, against Xi Jinping, and against other figures that the United States supports them, right? is that they live in a bubble, and they create a bubble for themselves, and they live in this bubble, and they think everyone around them thinks likewise, or they think most of their people think like them, because they are not on the ground in their countries. Mostly they are exiled, or they choose to live outside of their own countries, and they're detached from the street. So, and also idealize the alternative for Putin, for example, or for Xi, or for Bashar in Syria or elsewhere. And this is an image that they create, and they believe in this image. And then when something really goes something really horrible, like what happened with Navalny, that he died in prison, then they get very disappointed, and they start comparing him to like a messiah, like he was someone who had a supernatural capabilities, that he wouldn't die. For example, for us, Assange is a hero, but he doesn't have supernatural powers, right? We know that he could die. He could die whether in the UK prison, or he could die in American prison, or he could die of any natural causes. So idealizing him, making him like he's a messenger, this is one of the, in my opinion, the problems that many of these American-backed oppositions are suffering from, and it's a really hard issue, and I don't think that this mentality is serving them. So he says, importantly, Alexei Navalny will always be a perfect role model for us, a superhero for future generations, a man whose story children will grow up with. They should look up to him, not Putin. There have been so few flawless heroes in Russian history. Now there is one. Like, this is a very big exaggeration, Like, so Navalny is a superhero. He has supernatural powers, and his story will be told to the children and not of Putin. And he's a flawless person. He doesn't made any mistakes in the past. And I'm going to show you in this video if this is really the case, because he wasn't really the guy that they are trying to depict him, right? I'm sure that Navalny will be the founding father of a new Russia in the future, he says. Many expected that he could one day become president of Russia, the beautiful Russia of the future, as he called. He is now destined for greater things. He will be the messiah of a new Russia. Alexei Navalny will go down in history as a man who believed that Russia could be a normal democratic country. He believed in his own values. Like, this is the problem, right? As I told you, like, they believe in the lie that they are spreading. And here the lie is that this Navalny is a Democrat, right? And he could have become the president of Russia. How big of a support he had in Russia to become a president to begin with? And was he a Democrat, right? So I'm going to address all these cases, but let's finish this article. This is the last paragraph. Alexei Navalny is now at peace with himself. I know for sure that he was always an idealist. He wasn't a cynic. He didn't believe that everything could be bought. This is very important because for many years, we Russians were a very cynical society. Nobody believed in anything. Many people seriously believed that there was no democracy anywhere in the world, that there was no freedom of speech anywhere, that there was only propaganda everywhere, and that there was no such a thing, a fair justice system. But Alexei believed in it. He gave his life for it. So now we all have to believe in it. And the next generations will grow and learn by looking for him. The problem is, again, with many of these opposition figures, is that they completely also idealize the West. The West it has its positive things and it has its shortcomings, right? It's not like some utopian place where you have a freedom of speech and you can say whatever you want without consequences. No. We have an example, a journalist now, Julian Assange. We have many, many examples after the Ukraine war and how many journalists their bank accounts were closed, they lost their jobs, and now after the onslaught against Gaza, this has becoming more clear and clear and clear that freedom of speech, you may have the freedom to say what you want to say, but it will have grave consequences on your career, on your reputation, on your scholarship, on your education, and everything that could help you to become a better person in life, right? So they are not going to send you to jail right away. they did it with Julian Assange, but with many others, they will not throw them in jail in a dungeon, but they will send them to economic prison. They will lose their job. They will lose their bank account. If they are on a scholarship, they will lose their scholarship. If they are doing any freelancing jobs, they will no more receive offers. And I have so many examples. Look, I live in Germany and I can hear and no, not hear. Like I know so many examples of people after the Gaza onslaught, and they voiced their support for the Palestinians on social media, and they're freelancers, and they're DJs, for example. They stopped getting contracts to play music. They are artists who do, for example, makeup or hair, and so many different careers that I know here in Berlin. People are losing opportunities for voicing support to the Palestinians. So you cannot really tell me that it's 100% perfect system. No, it's not. There are limits, and the idealization that they're trying to do, that we have to become like them, it's a little bit like, this is also my problem with many of the Ukrainians who try to be European. We want to become like EU. We want to become like Europe. The same thing applies for some of the Armenians in Armenia. We want to become Europeans. Why don't you try to become an Armenian? Become a perfect Armenian. Be proud of your identity and your history. Why do you want to become like somebody else, right? The same thing applies to the Ukrainians. We want to become like Europe or like Europeans. Be Ukrainian. Be proud of your identity. Build a strong country. Make other people want to become like you, right? I really don't like this. Also, the same thing applies to many of these so-called anti-Assad opposition figures. I live in the West. My wife is a German. I have no grievances or no nothing against the West as a community. I'm against the policies, the foreign policies that inflict pain upon us in the Middle East and elsewhere around the world. I'm against the policy of individuals forming these policies, right? But I do not want to become like a German, right? I'm Syrian of Armenian origins. I keep my identity. I keep my culture. I integrate in the German society. I am a contributing member of this society. I pay my taxes, and I'm peaceful, and I don't break any laws. This is how I see myself. But why would I want to become like someone else, like somebody else's identity? This is something that I dislike in many of the Syrians. When they come to Germany, like they even post pictures of themselves like tearing apart their Syrian passport because they received a German passport. For me, this is disgusting, Keep your Syrian passport, be proud of your Syrian passport, and also when you become a German, be proud of your German. I don't understand why would you like to tear apart your Syrian passport, right? And this only happens with this so-called oppositionists, unfortunately. This author that I addressed his article, he was on MSNBC, by the way. And so this is him. So he says, again, he was a democratic superhero. Russian journalist reacts to the death of Navalny. Take a look what he has to say on this.
No, it's weird. But yes, we used to think that he's not an ordinary human being.
Navalny.
I remember that back in 2015, I published a book, All the Kremlin's Men, and one of the chapters was about Navalny. And I started that chapter saying that he's not an ordinary human being, he's an alien. He's supernatural. Mm-hmm. He has always been so sure that his destiny was to fight against the regime. And everyone seemed to consider him to be the person doomed to be the next president of Russia. He had to.
Everyone believed, you see, he's a superhero. Everyone believed that he could become the next president. Imagine if I go to any news outlet, and a friendly news outlet, because they will not host me on MSNBC, and I start talking like this about any individual, any politician, right? Idealizing someone because he's an opposite to Putin is okay, but if you go if they host you on Russia Today and you start idealizing Putin and calling him a superhero, calling him he has a supernatural powers, they will not host you again. They will not host you again because they don't need you come and speak emotional and sensational things about Putin. They want you to come and analyze. So this is really my problem with many of these opposition figures, as I mentioned. But how big of a support Navalny had in his society? So we are going to divide this, because his actual support, they say, many of the polls say that it was 5%, right? Many polls say that he had a 5% support, full support for his character and him becoming a president in Russia. However, there are more people who supported his work for exposing the corruption in Russia. Okay, so this is coming from Politico after the death of Navalny. It says, Russia's opposition died with Navalny. The sad truth is the absence of any serious mass opposition to Putin inside Russia, let alone to his war in Ukraine, speaks volumes. So this is the Politico, not a Russian outlet, right? And here they say, but while the opposition may not want to be a minority, the awful truth is that it is. So they are the minority in Russia, the people of Navalny. In a February 2021 survey by the Moscow-based Levada Center is belongs to the Carnegie. It's an American center, right? It's not a Russian center. So they said that only 19% of Russians approved of Navalny's exposing the corruption and moral bankruptcy of Putin and his cohort, and 56% disapproved of it. The rest, they didn't hear about Navalny. They don't say it here. I will tell you later. So we have 19% of the Russians approve on the work of Navalny exposing the corruption of Putin, and 56% disapproved it, and the rest didn't hear about him. The poll prompted Andrei Kolesnikov of Carnegie's Russia Center to write, Alexei Navalny's near-deadly poisoning, his return to Russia, and his subsequent imprisonment have only increased the Russian public's distrust and disapproval of him. I really don't know why that is the case, but apparently after his alleged poisoning, his approval rate has decreased. And this is coming from the Statica, guys, not me. Not a Russian outlet. This is the internationally renowned statistics website called Statica. Do you approve or disapprove of Alexei Navalny's activity? And this is the age, this is between 18 to 24, below the 25% or 25%. Between 25 to 39 years old, it's around 20%. And then it decreases between 40 to 55 and above 55, it's around 11% and around 10%. So overall, most Russians in every group did not approve of the political activity of Navalny, the Russian opposition leader, as of February 2022. The largest share of his politician supporters was between 18 to 24-year-old, measured at 25%. The approval rating among those 55 years and older was only 10%. So if you see also, there are so many people who never heard of him, have not heard, do not know him, or difficult to answer. Now, what about Putin? This is in 2022, right? Putin's ratings, according to Statica. Do you approve of the activities of Vladimir Putin as the president, prime minister of Russia? So in January 2024, this is only 1 month ago, over 8 out of 10% of Russians approved. So 80% of the Russians approved of the activities of the Russian President Vladimir Putin in January 2024. The popularity level was 8% points higher than in September 2022, when the figure declined following the announcement of a partial mobilization in the country. After Russia invaded Ukraine at the end of February 2022, the approval rating increased. During the COVID-19 lockdown in the spring 2022, the figure declined. Since his first presidential term started in 2000, Vladimir Putin's highest approval rating was measured at 88% when he was the country's prime minister. Despite Western sanctions that were imposed on the country in response to the violation of territorial integrity of Ukraine, the approval rating remained high over the following years. So, Putin's approval rating is not the highest in his history. It was at 88% when he was a prime minister. However, now it's 80% in January 2024. So you cannot really tell me that everyone in Russia approves for Navalny and he could become the president, right? I'm just trying to really deconstruct these claims because it's really important to present this case in a correct context with correct numbers. And now, all this, I would like to give credit to, his name was Baltic. What was his name, man? Brian Baltic, sorry. Brian Baltic, he posted an amazing video about Navalny's activities. And from his video, I found some very good information that I digged in and also want to present to you. So this is just for you to see. Just a second. So in 2005, Navalny started a youth social movement named DA, Democratic Alternative, right? So we wanted to know what's this DA movement in Russia, and this is coming from WikiLeaks, by the way, that they, of course, despise and hate for exposing how the United States is conspiring and plotting in opposition countries. And this is a cable, by the way, guys, from the US Embassy in Moscow, and they're sending this letter to their superiors in the State Department. So Maria Gaidar, daughter of former Prime Minister Yegor Gaidar, she is leading DA, Democratic Alternative, this movement that Navalny formed. She is ardent in her promotion of democracy, but realistic about the obstacles she faces. Gaidar said that DA is focused on nonpartisan activities designed to raise political awareness. She has received, you see, funding from the National Endowment for Democracy, a fact she doesn't publicize for fear of appearing compromised by an American connection. So the movement that Alexei Navalny formed in 2004 and 2005, DA, the Democratic Alternative, received the funding from the American Congress funded National Endowment for Democracy. And this fact, they didn't want to publicize it because they were afraid that they would be called compromised by American connection, which of course they are. She told the American embassy that DA was a complement to Oborona, not a competitor. Oborona is another opposition movement that the Americans are supporting in Russia back then, and is an effort to widen democratic base. She said, quote, "People who would want to join Oborona would not want to join DA, and vice versa, but we work together for a common goal." Gaidar told us that DA was more a forum for open discussion than a political movement. She has organized a series of debates among people with controversial viewpoints. She is also planning to hold a summer camp in 2007 to train up to 2,000 students in the ways of democratic activism. Yeah. So this is what the American organizations, the NGOs, do usually, right? They support these NGOs, they fund them, and they have done this also extensively in my country, Syria, the NED in Armenia. So they come to your country. It's a Trojan horse, right? And they bring with them their jobs, they bring with them their values, their education, and they start attracting the youth. Mostly they target the youth. And they hire the youth and they train them on the democratic policy making and how they can organize themselves politically against the government, and how can they become a good journalist, how can they create such live streamings, have YouTube channels, become a host, become a moderator. All these things, they prepare them, but they keep them under the control of the American embassy and the American way of seeing how politics should function, right? So you will not find one person who is receiving funding from the NED or USAID or Soros organizations who has an opinion that disapproves the American foreign policy objectives. So it's a Trojan horse in your country trying to use soft power to influence the opinions of the youth, change their opinions, prepare them to become the future leaders, and remove the current system that is objecting or doesn't follow the American foreign policy. I don't really understand why would anyone want for these organizations to operate inside their countries. So like we know all these things. Okay, he received the funding, but was he an agent for the CIA, for the MI6? This is a big allegation, right? And we would like to know if this is true. I found a video for Scott Ritter and Judge Napolitano. He believes that, he says, was Navalny an intelligence asset for MI6 or CIA or both? Scott Ritter, both, which we tried to pull lipstick on this pig and turned him into the symbol of democracy, but he was never a Democrat. He was always disruptive force, trained, funded, and directed by the CIA. I will show you what he has to say in this regard. So is there no sound again, guys? Okay, so you're telling me there is no sound. I truly apologize. I don't know why there is no sound in some of the videos that I play. It's the same platform. It's the same thing. I just want to refresh the page and just play it again. Let's see if there is a voice. Can you please tell me if there is a volume now, guys? So, okay, there is no voice, unfortunately. I can hear him, and everything is fine on my side. I don't know why there is no voice. So he believes that he was an MI6 and CIA agent, and he tried to coup against Putin. But he mentioned something that his one of his aides of Navalny, his name is Vladimir Ashurkov. He was asking an MI6 officer, his name is James William Thomas Ford, $10 to $20 million per year to start a color revolution in Russia. Right? This is a big allegation, and I wanted to know if this is correct, and we found out that it is correct. It is correct, unfortunately. And this is the video. I hope this time there is a voice and volume. I would really like you guys to tell me if there is a volume in this. So it's never good to be caught on camera attempting a coup in your country with a foreign intel service. In this video, Navalny's top AED, Vladimir Ashurkov, is asking MI6 officer James William Thomas Ford for $10 to $20 million a year to start a color revolution in Russia. This is why he was arrested and has major implications, especially in light of the CIA and MI6 sabotaging the Trump administration. Now, when I play this video, please let me know, guys, if there is a volume in this video so that if I have to continue the video or not.
We would expand our activities, of course, with a little money. If somebody would spend, I don't know, $10, $20 million a year on supporting this, we would see quite different picture. And this is, not a big amounts of money for people who have billions at stake in this game.
Yeah.
So that's the message that I'm trying to project in my fundraising effort and talking to people, business community. So you need to play on different chessboards. Commerce products, civil initiatives, propaganda, establishing contacts with the elite and explaining to them that we are reasonable people and not we're not going to demolish everything and take away their assets, things like that. So we'll see what comes out of that. So this broadly describes what I do.
Well, yeah, I mean, not a small job.
So, guys, this is the one of Navalny's top aide, and aide. His name is Vladimir Ashurkov, and he was caught on camera. Of course, it seems the Russian intelligence was recording him with some sound amplifier, asking an MI6 officer 10 to 20 million per year for political activities, for mobilization, for counter-propaganda against Putin, and try to sell their cause to the Russian people. Like, you have to know something, guys. Like, even if this happened in Russia, in the United States, if any American is caught with the Russian agent, which happens, by the way, and if any American is collaborating with the Russian intelligence to sabotage the political process in the United States, he would be considered a traitor, right? I don't know. Like, I think this is something that we could agree upon. And the Russians, do they do such things? Of course, they do such things. Just like any other intelligence agency, they do it. And so Navalny's closest contact, his aide, he was asking for money from the Brits intelligence to continue their operations inside Russia. So you really cannot really tell me that this is a democratic process and this guy was a natural opposition to Putin. No, he was groomed, he was supported, he was backed by these foreign intelligence agencies in order to disrupt the political system in Russia and create a political environment where there is either an internal strife between the opposition and the Putin's guys, or to bring these people to power in Russia, right? And this is a video which I will play it on small and very, I'm not going to play it loud, but this is one of the demonstrations that Navalny participated in the past in Russia alongside the neo-Nazis in Russia. So in every country, of course, there are neo-Nazis, and in Russia there are neo-Nazis. They are very radical right-wing people, racist people, call them whatever you want. And Navalny was part of this political scene. And this is the last part that I'm going to tell you about Navalny, that he was not really a Democrat, right? But they rebranded him, just like they rebranded Al-Qaeda in Syria into some cute multi-culti organization that they are seculars and they're fighting for democracy and human rights. Just like they rebranded the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria, they rebranded also Navalny. Navalny was not one of these people. I will just a second. This is the video. So, just a second, guys. Just a second. Now, this is it. Yes. So, let's take a look.
Моим сторонникам, которые удивлены, я хочу сказать, что удивляться не нужно. Я 4-й год подряд хожу на русский марш. Им стоит бояться! Им стоит бояться! Да! Кавказ соси! Кавказ соси! Москва, Кавказ! Аллах, пидорас! Уходите отсюда! Для русских Москва, для москвичей! Русские вперед! Русские вперед! Русские вперед! Совершенно нормально и уместно. И ничего опасного в этом мероприятии я не вижу.
Skinheads and masked youths, children and families, even members of the Orthodox Church. They believe they're fighting for the rights of Russians, rights that don't include those from other religions or anyone of non-Slavic appearance.
We're tired of these dirty Caucasians.
Chilling symbols are displayed with pride. In previous years,
Racist slogans were heard among the crowd as some 7,000 radical nationalists joined an annual demonstration known as the Russian March. They're united in anger at corruption, crime, immigration.
Алексей Навальный, он сегодня с нами на русском марше.
Всем привет, с праздником! Слава России! Им стоит бояться! Да! Вы настоящая сила! Господь Бог дал великую территорию! Сохранение для вас! Никто не имеет права...
So, guys, unfortunately, that Navalny was not a Democrat, and he was from the far-right scene, the real one, not the one that the mainstream media accuses any opposition of being a far-right or a neo-Nazi or a fascist group. And he was embedded with the anti-immigration. And when we see anti-immigration, we do not really mean that the migrants coming outside the Russian Federation. No, even the people who are part of the Russian Federation in the southern federal states, especially the Muslims, he has a video calling them cockroaches, and he shows a gun that this is how we should deal with them, right? So this is Navalny, guys. This is Navalny. I hope the people who like Navalny were watching this video, including some of my colleagues and friends. That would have been fun. So they're capitalizing now on the issue of Navalny, and they want to send more weapons to Ukraine because of this case. One of the two peoples that are nowadays lobbying, Ukraine will receive US aid. Well-known Republicans in Kiev assure this, I don't want to say the word, but this guy, Brian Fitzpatrick and Mike Pompeo, they are capitalizing on the case to mobilize the Republicans in the United States to send the $60 billion aid military package to Ukraine. And this is a short video I made today, 2.5 minutes. I will post it with the, as I always tell you guys, with the background music, with the graphics on my personal account on X. You can find me on X on my personal name, Kevork Almassian. It's written on the screen. But for you exclusively, I will show you the raw version. So let's watch it together.
Brian Fitzpatrick and Mike Pompeo have weighed in after the death of America's ally in Russia, Alexei Navalny, voicing their optimism about sending $60 billion in US military aid to Ukraine. Fitzpatrick said, "I can assure you that Ukraine will get the assistance it needs. This is not just Ukraine's fight, but it's the world's fight. Ukraine is on the front lines of democracy." Pompeo, on the other hand, said, "We collectively must win. We have to win. We have to win in a way that decisively proves that our model, the model of the West, the model of the people of Ukraine, the model of the people of Europe, the model of the people of America, and those who believe in human dignity and property rights, and all of the things that have made America so successful for 250 years, we have to demonstrate that that's the victorious model." So, in case you were in a coma and failed to follow the events in the past 3 decades, the US is leading a coalition of countries to spread the values of democracy and human rights. Unless, of course, you're not hypnotized by the legacy media and have seen what the US did to the people and the countries it has invaded and destroyed. And even if you are not following the geopolitical events in the near past, I am sure you see America's complicity in the ongoing genocide in Gaza, where American bombs have killed over 30,000 civilians. Over 60% of them are women and children. I'm also sure you followed the case of Julian Assange, a journalist who had a brilliant idea to stop the wars by exposing the true motives of people like Pompeo, who, by the way, plotted to assassinate him through the CIA. Nevertheless, I'm confident that the people in America are waking up to the fact that their taxpayer money is flying to Ukraine in one of the largest money laundering operations since the Afghanistan war, and they want to invest in their infrastructure, which, by the way, has become the mockery of the world.
When I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
The glory of the American experiment. This is the glory of the American experiment. We cheated, we lied, we stole. Thank you for reminding us that. Another politician who is capitalizing on this case is from a German government official. And in the Bundestag, in the German federal parliament, he says, Russia must lose this war, and this should be the set as the goal of German politics. He is the chairman of the Bundestag Committee on Foreign Policy, Norbert Röntgen. Let's see what he has to say in this regard.
Erstens, Putin muss diesen Krieg verlieren. Und das muss als Ziel der deutschen Politik benannt werden. Es muss von der gesamten Bundesregierung und von allen Mitgliedern unter Einschluss des Bundeskanzlers so als das Ziel deutscher Politik gesagt werden, meine Damen und Herren. Das beeindruckt Putin. Zweitens, die Unterstützung der Ukraine mit Munition und Waffen muss jetzt hochgefahren werden.
You know, the problem with such statements, I do not want to comment much about it because I live in Germany. I don't have suicidal thoughts, but such statements are made out of wishful thinking. It's not based on clear military economic calculations. How are they going to defeat Putin? Can he answer this question? No. Can they equip Ukraine enough to match the Russian military power? No. Are they going to give Ukraine nuclear weapons? No. What else? What are you going to do? Okay, let's suppose all these things happened and you sent enough weaponry to Ukraine and equipped them with enough weaponry to match the Russian power, right? Just for an argument's sake, who's going to carry on fighting in Ukraine? Do they have enough manpower? Like all these questions, they cannot answer, but they just come to under the rooftop of the Bundestag and say things like this, which is, in my opinion, nothing but wishful thinking. They will not be able to defeat Russia. The Ukrainians are not able to defeat Russia. So if I'm a politician, my job is to see what are my options and what are the realistic options and what fits or suits my foreign policy and my national interests. And this is, of course, in my opinion, is a peace treaty between Russia and Ukraine, and that Europe and Russia would coexist peacefully. Because the alternative, you know what's the alternative, right? Tens of millions of people could die and perish if anything goes wrong and miscalculation happens between these countries. So may God really protect the Europeans and the Russians from the insanity of some politicians and their wishful thinking. This is just what I want to say in this regard. And if we move to the case of Julian Assange, again in Germany, a German journalist is attacking actually Julian Assange. And this is, again, a Google translation. He says, the myth of the White Knight. His name is, the author of his name is Stefan Cornelius. So he says, Assange was, just a second, let me check here. Yes, Assange was subjected to angry curses and fantasies of killing, especially from conservative circles. At the core of the criminal law, however, there is no indication that judiciary cannot ultimately come to a clean verdict. So according to this journalist, even if the CIA and some of the politicians in the United States plotted to assassinate and kill him, he still believes that there is no indication that the judiciary will be biased, or there will be no clean verdict, you know. So I think the last time they wanted to kill someone in prison, like Jeffrey Epstein, he died, right? Please note, he says, Assange is not charged with disseminating secret documents, but with inciting and aiding and abetting that data theft. This is a pure lie. You know that, right, guys? Julian Assange is not he didn't hack this, and he didn't incite and help Chelsea Manning or anyone else to hack into these profiles or teach them. He didn't teach anyone to hack and do the work of hacking these documents. He received the documents, he published them. This is a lie, big lie. This is also, he says, an important difference because Assange always describes himself as a journalist and sees the judicial proceeding as an attack on press freedom. In fact, Assange is least of all a journalist and more of a hacker and activist. Like, this is really disgusting, man. He says the publication of 250,000 data records stand up to no comparison in its excessiveness and radicalism. It contradicts all journalistic principles. He published all data on his platform, WikiLeaks, regardless of their impact and potential danger. This is important, right? And these papers were dangerous for dissidents and informants in authoritarian regimes, dangerous for those seeking protection who were persecuted because of their sexual orientation, dangerous for a large group of people who turned cogs in the diplomatic machine and didn't just want to change the world for the worse. Just keep in mind this argument, guys, that Julian Assange put the lives of many people in danger for publishing this information, and we will address this. Ultimately, Assange is not the superhero of press freedom, but an activist whose radicalism repelled early colleagues such as the German computer scientist Daniel Domscheit-Berg. The title of his book describes the most dangerous website in the world. That's not wrong, as Hillary Clinton learned. And of course, for Hillary Clinton, of course it was dangerous for her. We all knew how a crook person she is and a criminal person she is. The data from the Democratic campaign headquarters, which was siphoned off by Russian hackers and published on WikiLeaks, gave the duel between Clinton and Donald Trump an important, perhaps decisive turning point in 2016. So this is the point, right? He put the life of people in danger. And this is the same question was asked by Clayton Morris yesterday on his show to Glenn Greenwald. So he asked him this exact question, right? So did Julian Assange put the lives of people in danger? Let's take a look.
Was the idea about the political prosecution. And of course, under the extradition treaty, this is a
this is the question here.
Leaps and bounds. So maybe they've even flourished under this. What do you think about that? At least that one part of the argument from the defense.
This is a completely standard tactic, propagandistically speaking, on the part of the U.S. security state going back decades. Every single time there's a leak of information that they want to hide, not to protect the security, the national security of the United States, but to protect their own reputation, because these leaks reveal lies and deceit and crimes that they've committed. That was true of the Pentagon Papers. It was true of our reporting in the Edward Snowden archives. It's been true of all of the WikiLeaks reporting. And what they have convinced people of to believe, almost like reflexively without having to present any evidence, is that every time there's a leak of classified information, it necessarily means that people in the field have been put into danger, that the names of undercover operatives have been revealed to our enemies, that it has endangered all sorts of people all over the world. Every single time you ask someone who makes that claim about any of these leaks to give you a single example of a single name of an operative or an undercover agent or an informant that has been disclosed by these materials, they will be completely incapable of providing it to you. Right when the WikiLeaks leak happened in 2010, the government constantly came out and made claims. It was the Obama administration saying WikiLeaks and Julian Assange have blood on their hands. And when reporters finally started asking, well, what blood do they have on their hands? They started realizing that they had been misled, that there was nobody who had been harmed, exactly as your question suggested. And then good reporters like the ones who worked at McClatchy, one of the very few to question the Iraqi WMD lie, started publishing articles that you can find online, which essentially said that the U.S. government completely exaggerated, if not fabricated, all of these wild claims. And even U.S. generals came out and said the idea that these materials have harmed Americans or put people in danger is probably a fabrication. But it's one of the things that they have instilled in our bloodstream to get people to almost automatically oppose anybody who exposes things that they have decided should be secret.
So, guys, we have a case now in front of the court, and the defense team of the United States, if they had a case and can prove that Julian Assange has endangered the life of any individual by publishing the information and the documents that he published on his website, they would have presented it, right? So how many people's names were given and to the court? No one. And all these journalists and talking heads, I can assure you guys, those who are attacking Julian Assange and calling him an activist and a hacker, they receive scripts, headlines, main arguments, or they know what to write anyways. The job of the journalist is not to support governments. The job of the journalist is to make the governments feel uncomfortable. If you make the government feel comfortable as a journalist, you're not a journalist, right? You are a prostitute, period. But not everyone in Germany is like attacking Julian Assange. One of the great member of parliament, the federal parliament in Berlin, Sevim Dagdelen, she was in London, and she gave a brilliant speech about this case. I would like to show you because I want to show you also the positive people, right?
Thank you, dear friends. It's great to see you all here. Over 12 years ago, I had the honor to visit as the first parliamentarian Julian Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. Over 12 years ago. And over 12 years ago, Julian has been deprived of his liberty. And today he is facing the end of this political show trial in United Kingdom. And I think it's a shame for the justice system in the United Kingdom, how they are behaving to the rule of open justice in limiting the legal observers, the political observers, and the press observers in this court hearing today. It's a shame. And it's also a shame, and was always, all the Western countries who are lecturing us and lecturing the global South about international law, about human rights and values, all the values the Western countries have. We have seen this in the last 12 years in their behavior and the political punishment and the persecution of a journalist who has lectured us about the hypocrisy of the West in showing us the dirty war crimes of the West in Afghanistan and Iraq. And that's why we are here, because of our right for information. What are they doing in our name? Because their war crimes are not in our name. And this is why we are protesting here. And I'm saying to you, we did it in the past, we do it today, and we will do it in the future. As long as Julian is in prison, we have no freedom and no free press. Julian's freedom is our freedom. The fight for freedom, the fight for Julian Assange's freedom is the fight for freedom itself. Not the journalist who is publishing crimes, war crimes, belongs to the doc. It is the one who is ordering the war crimes, like George Bush and all the others, and Tony Blair. They are belonging to the trial. They are belonging to the prison. And that's why we are here, and we will stay here till Julian is free. Thank you.
My big respect to Sevim Dagdelen. She was from the left-wing party called Die Linke, and they separated. She and Sarah Wagenknecht, they formed a new party called Bundes Sarah Wagenknecht. I think they have around 5 to 8% of in the recent polls. I just want to address one point that our friend Sunny has been raising this issue multiple times in our live streaming, and I think this can't be far from being wrong for multiple reasons. One, Assange published documents belonging to the Hillary Clinton and other state secretary documents, and these conversations were about Israel, and they showed that Israel has an invested interest in Syria to cause a civil war between the Shiites and the Sunnis for the benefit of Israel. And many of these documents showed the relationship between the United States and Israel. However, the job of Julian Assange is not to give political statements. The job of Julian Assange was, when he created WikiLeaks, to publish the documents that he receives. So every document that he received, he published them, whether about Russia, whether about China, whether about Iran, whether about Syria. And if he received leaked documents from Israel, he would have published it. So the idea that he didn't publish documents about Israel doesn't mean that he is pro-Israel, because if he received them, he would have published it. But highly likely the case is that he didn't receive documents from the Israeli Secret Service or from the Israeli State Department or the Foreign Ministry or other ministries to publish them. If you have secret documents belonging to the Israeli side, send them to WikiLeaks and they will publish it. I can assure you about that. So I will finally go to the topic of the title of our today's live streaming, and it's about China. And to be honest with you, myself, following the Chinese foreign policy, I was myself surprised positively. And China backs Palestinians' quote, right to armed struggle against Israeli occupation. So China expressed support for the right of Palestinians to engage in armed struggle against Israel, stressing this is not terrorism, during the fourth day of hearings at the International Court of Justice, ICJ, in a case against Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian territories. Quote, in pursuit of the right of self-determination, the Palestinian people have the right to the use of force to resist against oppression and to complete the establishment of the Palestinian state. Ma Chinmin, a Chinese Foreign Ministry legal advisor, told the World Court on February 2022. And to be honest with you, this position is not one step, but few steps ahead of the Russian one. The Russian statement was not up to the expectations. And the statement basically of the Chinese side gives the Palestinian side the right to use violence, so armed struggle, which is killing Israeli soldiers who were occupying the territories of the Palestinians after the 1967 war, when Israel occupied much of the Palestinian territories and also our territories in Syrian Golan Heights. And this was a statement which is very surprising. It's a bombshell. It left the Israelis and the Americans very angry. Let's take a look.
In pursuit of the right to self-determination, these people have the right to engage in struggles, seek and receive support. On the basis of that right, Palestinian people declared the establishment of State Palestine in 1988, which has been recognized by over 130 countries. In pursuit of the right to self-determination, Palestinian people use force to resist foreign oppression and complete the establishment of an independent state. Is inalienable right, well founded in international law.
So the Palestinian statehood, which was the Palestinians agreed to in 1988 to have a clear border on what Palestine may look like. So under this recognition and acceptance for two-state solution, and also then what came later of negotiations between the Israeli side and the Palestinian side, that the Palestinians will recognize the right of Israel to exist under this agreements and under international law, because Israel still occupies the territories that belongs to the Palestinians after the Six-Day War after 1967 war. Under these circumstances, China says that the Palestinians have the right to use armed struggle, so meaning they can carry arms, they can fight against the Israeli occupation forces to liberate their territories and establish their statehood.
Various people freed themselves from colonial rule and foreign oppression to realize independent statehood after World War II. Their practices serve as convincing evidence for the right. Numerous other resolutions recognize legitimacy of struggling by all available means, including armed struggle by peoples under colonial domination or foreign occupation, to realize the right to self-determination.
So guys, he is here indicating that the Israeli side is an occupation force and it's a colonial force. And the Palestinians have the right for self-determination, which means they have the right to have their statehood. And in the pursuit of statehood, they are allowed under international law to carry arms and fight against the Israeli occupation forces.
For instance, the UNGA resolution 3070 of 1973, I quote, reaffirms the legitimacy of the people's struggle for liberation from colonial and foreign domination and alien subjugation by all available means, including armed struggle, end of quote. This recognition is also reflected in international convention. For example, the Arab Convention for Suppressing of Terrorism of 1998 affirms, I quote, the right of peoples to combat foreign occupation, aggression by whatever means, including armed struggle, in order to liberate their territories and secure the right to self-determination and independence, end of quote.
So guys, all in all, this is a very, very surprising statement, to be honest with you. I myself that followed the Chinese foreign policy approach in the past few years, I didn't expect them to go this far, especially when it comes to the armed struggle, which means they are giving legitimacy to groups like Hamas and Jihad for carrying arms against the Israeli occupation forces. So let me know, what do you think about this Chinese position? Do you think that China is trying to present itself as an alternative force to the United States in the Middle East after the United States lost its position as a neutral power? Can China play a mediator role in the region, or it's going to be exclusive to the United States as it was the case for several decades, unfortunately speaking, or China can step in and end this bloodshed? Until this moment, it seems that nobody is either is capable or want to stop this bloodshed in the Gaza Strip, and Israel is determined on going to Rafah, where above 1.4 million civilians are stuck basically there. And today Bloomberg was criticizing the Israeli side for not having any viable plan to what are you going to do in Rafah? Okay, let's suppose you bombed Rafah and you liberated Rafah from what? And then where would the people go? What is going to happen next? What about the Palestinian state? They don't have a strategy. This is what Bloomberg was saying. And even the Brits So they were threatening they want to freeze the armed shipments to Israel if they go to Rafah. I think all these statements from the Brits and from the American side is just to save their face after being complicit with the horrible onslaught against the Palestinian people and being accused of being complicit with the potential genocide. And this case is brought in front of the ICJ, and they could be found guilty of being complicit of genocide if the ICJ decides that Israel violated the Genocide Convention. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Really, I appreciate you all. We are 400 people watching this live streaming. Please hit the like button before leaving. It's a great service and help for me for this video to be watched by more people. And if you want to support my independent work like this I'm doing, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen. Patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Time. May peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.